Alright, Twinkies here. I'm out with a Carbine Cowboy. We brought out some of our collection for the 4th of July. We're going to celebrate the evolution of the standard issued rifle for the U.S. military, starting way back in the 1880s. I'm sure the Carbine Cowboys mentioned it before, that I did end up buying a Trapdoor. Here's the rifle length version. I also picked up the Carbine one a couple weeks ago. So it's similar, they're the same pretty much except barrel length. Obviously you can see the stock's a little different. The actions work the same. You have to cock the hammer back, then you pop open the top, kicks out the old shell, you load it in, single shot 45-7. Both of mine have the Buffington sight on it. They were a little optimistic because this one goes out to where is that, like 1,800 yards. Really optimistic for a 45-70, but they decided it was worth it. Carbine comes with the little saddle ring on it. For the loads, the 2-shot, the rifle was a 45-70-500, so it had the 70 grains of black powder, 500 grain bullet. I do have some of those out today. The Carbine was a 45-55 405, so 55 grains of black powder, 405 grain bullet. Have some of those out today as well. Next up, after the Trapdoors, the military went to the Craig Jorgensen's. Right here, had the same type of sight where you flip it up, you get the nice little range. However, with the Craigs, they went to bolt action and a side load, to where now you can have extra ammo in it instead of just single shot. Holds 5, loads from the side. Shoots a 30-40 Craig, which they don't make the 220 grain bullets anymore, I heard.
No, the heaviest you can get for them now is about a 200 grain bullet. But the thing about it is the Craig, they introduced in 1892, and they stopped production of them right about World War I. And I have heard stories where they have actually had troops in France during World War I that were carrying 30-40 Craigs. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I've heard the rumor.
Yep. And then both the Trapdoors and the Craig were used in the Spanish-American War. Trapdoor was a little bit earlier, so it was used in the Indian Wars as well. Following the 30-40 Craig, the military went to the 1903 Springfield. Same thing, has a nice little bolt action, still has the flip-up sight on it for extended ranges. And they changed the caliber from 30-40 Craig to 30-06. 30-06 was used in, well, not 30-06, the 1903 was used pretty much from World War I up to Korea, I believe. I think they did have some sniper variants in Vietnam, but I'm not entirely
They did
sure.
have some of the sniper variants, yeah.
So, at the 1903. Next up, T17 Enfield. Again, another bolt action, flip up sight. However, instead of being open, they changed it to a peep sights in the back. Still chambered in 30-06. The one of the bigger differences between the 1903 Springfield and the P17 was P17 will hold 6 rounds in the internal clip, or mag. The 1903 only holds 5. P17 was used pretty much the same length the 1903 was.
Yeah, and for historical purposes, there were more P17 Enfields made than there actually was 03 Springfields back during World War I.
Yeah. Well, they figure 6 rounds versus 5. Might as well carry more ammo before you had to reload.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Which brings us up to World War II and the M1 Garand. Now, if you watched some of the older videos or other videos we've had, you would have seen this one before. M1 Grand's a semi-auto 30-06, holds 8 rounds. Still has the rear peep sight on it. However, it doesn't have a flip up. It now has knobs to adjust for the distance. And
that one takes an 8-round in block.
Yep, 8-round. They were used from World War II up until, well, they were used through Korea.
Yeah, and they were also used in the early days of Vietnam too.
Yeah, I think right at the start of Vietnam.
Yep.
And we have the M1 Carbine. Same type of action as the M1 Grand, just doesn't hold the bolt open. Same rear peep sights, or same style of rear peep sights. Shoots 30 carbine. It's mostly issued as a closer quarters weapon because of obviously the length. It's a lot easier to maneuver. And it's mag fed instead of using the clips.
And they made 2 variants of that one too. One was semi-automatic and the M2 version was full auto.
Yeah, which would be fun to hold.
Yeah. I think on the full auto version of the M1 Carbine, it was capable of 850 rounds a minute.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Especially back then. And yeah, so M1 Carbine saw action from World War II through Korea and partially Vietnam. Which brings us to the M14 or M1A, so or M1As, let's say now. Same style as the Grand and the Carbine, because this was actually modeled after the M1 Grand. Fixed the 2 main problems with the Grand, which was the op rod was too long, so it was a little weak. And if you had to top off, you had to put a whole new 8-round M block instead of a magazine. So now it's mag fed, same operating system. This saw action through Vietnam.
Matter of fact, aren't they still using them by some military personnel over there in the Middle East as designated sniper rifles?
They are now. They changed the nomenclature from the M14 to the M39 EMR or the MK14, depending on which branch you talk to.
Yeah.
Swapped out the stock, so it's now skeletonized and modular, so you can adjust the cheek weld and the length of pull and all that. But still, same action. Which brings us up to current times, where you have the M16s and M4s, and now the M27s, where you went from 308 to 5.56, got the pistol grip on it. This one I actually built to model the M27, and used since, well, introduced in Vietnam, still in use today. I still don't like the cartridge, but that's what they wanted, so that's what they got. And like most of you probably already know with ARs, they're fairly ergonomic and extremely customizable. So now we're going to actually shoot some of these and just have some fun.
Yeah, this is the fun part of the video. Now the history lesson's over. The thing that people have to understand is you know, when you stop and take into consideration the lineage of all them rifles laying there, we got rifles that go all the way back to 1873 up to modern day. You know, it's, you know, the evolution really wasn't that great. I mean, with the bolt actions, I mean, all they basically did was change the caliber. That was about it. You know, they went from a black powder 45-70 cartridge to the 30-40 Craig, which was the first military smokeless cartridge. And then they just, you know, took the 7 Mauser from the Spanish-American War, lengthened it a little, made the 30-06, and that stayed the service cartridge for 50, 60 years, you know. And then the 308 was nothing but a shortened version of the 30-06, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history involved with a lot of them cartridges. What are you shooting there for us?
So these are 500 grain 4570. Black powder loads, so it doesn't blow up the trapdoor in my face. I mean, yes, I'm fugly, but still. I need to try the best I can and work with what I got. So the 500 grain ones were designed for the rifle length, so we'll be shooting them out of the rifle today. And I do have the 405s here. You can tell because they're slightly shorter, different actual bullet on them, or different style. And that will be going through the carbine. Alright, everything looks clear.
Yeah, matter of fact, that stump laying down there, I'd hold for it and see if you can hit it.
Alright.
Matter of fact, the carbine and the rifle, chambered in that 4570, is what General Custer and his boys had at the Battle of Little Bighorn, except for they were the carbine version. Other than that, they were a single shot. They were great for distance, but not too good for close quarter.
And a lot of people.
Yeah. I think, what was it? They shot that 4570 in that rifle at Sandy Hook, New Jersey, 3,000 yards, and it still penetrated, what was it, 3 inches of pine and a couple inches of sand.
It was an inch of oak, 8 inches of sand.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Yep. I didn't know New Jersey was 3,000 yards long.
Lengthwise, maybe. Width, I don't think so.
I wonder how big of a target that was they were shooting at. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine trying to shoot at something that big, that distance? You'd have to have a target that's half the state of Montana to see it.
Yeah. Alright. So, we're going to be shooting them, just load them up single shot. And if any of you are wondering, the reason I'm holding the other two like this is it makes it a little quicker to reload instead of trying to reach in your pocket to grab. Alright, let's hold for that stump. Hitting high, ain't I?
You're hitting high. Yep.
Oh, that figures. I have the sight laying down, which they actually did a bunch of math for to calibrate to where if you aim at a person's belt buckle between 0 and 286 yards, I believe, 280 something, I believe it's 286. If you aimed at the belt buckle, you'd hit between the belt buckle and the throat.
Consistent. Thing makes a lot of smoke.
Well, it is black powder, not smokeless. So now we're going to switch over to the carbine version, if I can actually hold the ammo. Should have less recoil because there's 15 grains less of a powder charge. It's a lighter bullet, and but again, the sight was also designed for the same thing, to where we would be able to actually hit a belt buckle or person at that range. So, same process to load and everything.
Off to the right. Not bad though, considering you just bought those rifles and you haven't sighted them in.
Or really tested any loads for it. Alright, so now we're moving on to the Craig. To load this one, instead of being from the top, pop it open from the side. Only loading 3 into this. Well, close it. And we're ready.
Oh, you should do the hammer up.
And it sounds like we got somebody coming over that hill.
Yeah.
So I'll hold off shooting just to make sure we got safety for everybody and we don't accidentally shoot somebody.
Yeah, being 4th of July weekend, there's a lot of people out here today.
Alright, so whoever that was ended up going away from our backstop, so we're going to continue shooting. We got 1 shot left with this 30-40 Craig.
Nice.
And that does kick it out a very good ways.
You're trying to say the extractor on that one works?
Works well. So now we're going to be moving on to the Trapdoor Springfield. I'm going to be loading the same ammo as I load in the M1 Grand. It's that Winchester Victory Series. And we do have somebody coming over, so
we're going to have to wait.
We'll wait. Alright, so we're in the clear now. I'm just going to load 4 by themselves. Usually these come with the 5-round stripper clips to make it a little easier. However, I don't have any of them, so I'm stuck loading it by hand.
Looks like you're hitting just a tad high.
Tad high? Alright.
Yep, right over the top of it. Dead center, but right over the top of it. And when you consider you're shooting offhand at 100 yards, it held a consistent accuracy.
Yes, it did. And with the 1903, there was a lever right here to switch it from single shot to where you had to load each round, or if you flipped it up, you could feed from the internal mag. I had it flipped up, and when it does that, it actually locks the bolt to the rear once you're empty.
Yeah, they called that the magazine cutoff. Their idea was that way guys didn't waste ammunition. I had to load one at a time.
Alright, moving on to the T17. Got 4 shots for it as well. This one does hold 6 internally instead of 5. And again, don't have a stripper clip, so we're doing it by hand.
And it was hitting in the same place your 03 was. Dead center, just a smidge high.
Yep. And with these compared to the Craig, since they're side ejects instead of a top, you can actually mount a scope on them.
Yeah, which is a plus if you want to use one to hunt with.
Yeah, 30-06 is a great hunting cartridge.
Yeah, it is.
So now, back to the M1 Grand, one of my personal favorite rifles. And this one does lock back once you empty it.
And you know what's funny? I didn't even hear the ping.
So now, moving on to the M1 Carbine. Mag fed, 30 carbine. It's a lot smaller ammo. However, recoil's a lot less. And then with the carbine, there is no bolt hold open, so after you fire your last shot, it will go forward. Moving on now, got the M14, where we have a nice big box mag. Holds 308, so it's not a small cartridge. It can actually take most game in North America. And with the M14, when you're loading it, you have to make sure you rock it. Front goes in first, and then back follows. To unload the mag, just hit this lever right here and it rocks out. And now we're coming up to modern day, where you have the ARs, 5.56, a little smaller than 308, actually a lot smaller. I also think it's a lot more worthless, unless you're shooting maybe coyotes, rabbits, something like that. But with it being a lot smaller round, it recoils a lot less, just like the 30 carbine recoils a whole lot less than the M1 Grand. What the? Must have been a dud. So we had 2 duds in that load of 10. Kind of happens when you buy some cheap surplus ammo, especially ones that's been sitting around for a few years. But it happens, helps you with your failure to fire drills.
Well, now I have a question for you there, buddy. Since you've shot everything from the 1884 infantry rifle and a 45-70 up to modern day 5.56, after testing and shooting every one of them rifles, give me your honest opinion for the time period, what you would rate as the worst to, well, let's say not so good.
Probably what I would say for the worst one would be modern times, just because of the caliber. If it was like the 308, like the M14, it would probably be one of the best rifles. Just with the caliber being as small as it is, you get enough people hopped up on opium or some other stimulant drug, especially meth or opium, it takes more than one shot to put them down. Sometimes up to 5 or 6. Probably for the time period, the rate of fire with the Trapdoors is their biggest downfall. Because I know a couple years after them, the Winchesters started having a bunch of lever actions. I think, actually no, when they were being made, Winchester had some lever actions. You have an increased tube capacity with those, and being able to shoot faster is not necessarily better all the time, but it does help when you have a bunch of idiots coming after you. As far as the Craig, it's nice all around, has a very smooth bolt. I actually really like that one. The 03 Springfield and P17. P17's bolt's a little stiffer, but they had an internal spring in there to help eject it, to help cycle it a little faster. I think with enough practice you can cycle both about the same speed. M1 Grand, its major downfall is it only holds 8. Other than that, absolutely love the rifle. 30 Carbine, wish it had a bolt hold open, but when it was made during that time, I don't think they saw the need for one. The M14, yeah, if it was a little more ergonomic, great. Even as it is now, it's still great.
Well, I don't know. I would say, given the time period, with the technology that they had at the time, I will say the U.S. military tried to give their troops the best weapons they could, given the time period.
Yeah, given the time period, they were great weapons.
Personally, for me, I would not hesitate to pick up any of those rifles laying there. I will echo your comment on the 5.56. I'm not what you'd call a die-hard 5.56 cartridge fan. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it does have its downfall. Then again, you could say the same thing for the 30 Carbine, but if I had to judge the two rifles side by side, I'd probably opt for the 30 Carbine because it is firing a 110 grain bullet, which is twice the mass of the 5.56, and yes, you can even get a 30 round magazine for a 30 Carbine. So I guess it would just be personal preference. But if I had to pick one that I had to take into harm's way, call me an old fuddy-duddy, but my number one pick would have to be the M14. Not that I have anything against the M1 Grand, but it's the fact that the M14 has a 20 round box magazine, and you can top it off a whole lot faster than you can the M1 Grand. That said though, I'm not taking anything away from the Grand. I would not feel undergunned carrying it at all. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, actually with mine, I'd have to agree with the Carbine Cowboy. If all these were sitting in front of me and I had to pick one to go back to Afghanistan with, I'd take the M14. I will pass on full auto, even though the original M14s did have it, I would still pass on it because they're shooting full auto, especially for any extended period of time. If it's not mounted on even just a bipod and you're just firing it offhand, it does become a little harder to control. But I do like the overall M14. Just the cartridge is a nice one. It's reliable. It's accurate. I mean, I do wish for a little more ergonomics, but the ergonomics on it are not bad. But then again, saying with pretty much every gun here, except the 5.56, I don't feel undergunned. That one just takes too many rounds to put somebody down. If it was a better cartridge, yes, I won't feel under gun. But when you have to shoot somebody 3 times, it's a little redundant.
Well, that was the thought process with the 4570, you know. Their attitude at the time, most of the people they were encountering were mounted on horseback. So even if you didn't hit the rider, if you took out the horse, that still rendered the person combat ineffective. And let me tell you, that 4570 will kill a horse, no problem. I mean, you figure it fires a 1/2-inch chunk of lead, and you figure even at the speeds that it's firing it at 1,200–1,300 feet a second, I guarantee you there isn't too many people that want to catch that big chunk of lead coming through the air at all. But, you know, we thought we would just do this little presentation for you today, being the 4th of July. I really appreciate Twinkie bringing out a lot of his toys, because he can fill the void with some of the ones that I don't have. And, you know, we're going to get together and we're going to try to do another video, or 2, or maybe even 3, because he has some that were Axis weapons, and we're going to stack them up against the Ally counterpart, the M1 Garand, M1 Carbine, 03 Springfield, that kind of thing. And I'll let him tell you real quick what Axis weapons he has to kind of set you up for our future video.
Alright, and I don't want to take all the credit with filling the void from the Carbine Cowboys collection. He does have a few that I don't. He fills the void that I have. But the Axis weapons I've got, oh, just cut it. Alright, so the Axis weapons I have 2 Japanese Arasakas, 2 Italian Carcanos, got the Mosin Nagant from the Soviet Union. However, it's debatable whether it's Allied or Axis, because at the start we didn't have a problem with them, but they weren't really helping us. At the end they kind of helped us because Germany tried to screw them over, so that one's kind of iffy. But I also do have a 8 Mauser. It's a Turkish Mauser, not a German. I can't afford the German one.
Well, y'all, I hope you enjoyed that little video. We are interested in hearing your questions and comments below. So from the great state of Montana, this is the Carbine Cowboy and Twinkie saying we hope you have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend.